Hi guys, I am here to share with you my latest creation in which I've made. I decided to make a simple A-line dress using simple techniques in which I am excited to share with you. It's a simple dress without lining, good for cocktail events and nice dressy occasions. Without further ado, I'll show you how I did it. So first of all, what I did was I traced the skirt pattern block, which I kept from uni. Super handy. It's a base size 8, but it's considered quite small. So this pattern block is relatively small to my waistline, especially because lately I've gained a few inches around the waist. I'm sorry that my camera didn't capture the whole skirt in this shot, but I will zoom out in this one here. So in this shot here, I have added an extension at the waistline just because the pattern block is quite small to my waistline. Here, I'm just trying to get the side seam of how far out of a flare I want this skirt. I've added a few lines because I did a mistake on how much flare I wanted. So now that I've got the measurement of the skirt, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Next, I'm going to move on to the front of the skirt. And again, we're just going to repeat the same process of tracing the pattern block and then adding on the extension to fit my waistline. I'm going to go ahead and add a flare to the waistline extension. So drawing out using the pattern block, we're going to trace in that line and then go ahead and draw in the lines to complete it. So here's what the overall skirt looks like. I've labeled it. I try to label all the pattern pieces I do, just so that I know what patterns are what when it comes to sewing and cutting out the fabric. Once I've cut around the skirt, I'm going to move on to tracing the back top pattern. So using this pattern block, I'm going to go ahead and draw out my design lines. This is the armhole. I drew out the pattern. It was quite pointy at the top right corner, so I'm just flattening it out, hence why I scribbled there. Next, I'm going to go ahead and cut the pattern piece. Now that we've got the pattern piece out, we're going to move on to the front top pattern piece. And so we're just going to trace around it and then kind of follow the curvature of the top of the skirt. So the top of the skirt will match the bottom of the top, and then kind of following the curvature and the measurement of the skirt to the top to the skirt. And then following the same process of labeling and then cutting it out the pattern piece. Next, what we're going to do is the layout plan. So what I've done here is place the pattern pieces on the fabric, folding the fabric in half, also the skirt pieces in half. Next, I'm going to pin it down so that they're all secure to the fabric. Next, we're going to cut at the pattern pieces with a 1 cm seam allowance. Now we're going to move on to unpinning, taking out all the pins of the patterns so that we can connect the patterns and so they're ready to be sewn. And so now that they're all taken out, we're going to repin them the back pattern skirt, we're going to cut it in half. So that's where the zip is going to be placed in. So here I'm placing the back of the top to the back of the skirt. So left and right hand side here, just pinning it in place so that they're ready to be sewn and it doesn't move. Everything's secure. And here I'm going to move on to attaching and sewing the front top to the front skirt. Using the pins always helps keep everything in place. And then now I'm moving on to sewing the back top to the back skirt, both left and right. And then we're going to overlock the top to the skirt seams so that there's no raw edges. Next, I'm going to attach the side seams of the top and skirt in which we have just combined. And now it's just the left and right hand side in which we are sewing the dress of. Putting the pins in place again keeps everything secure, and that all the seams match up in which it's supposed to be. So that was the left hand side done. Now we're doing the right hand side seam of the dress. So what happened after I did the side seam is that I overlocked the side seams. I wasn't able to film it, so I do apologize in advance that I'm not able to show it. But yes, so now we're moving on to doing the bias binding at the armhole. So folding in at 0.5 and creating this clean finish. I'm using a navy color. I should be using black, but at the time I did not have a black. Now that that's completed, I'm going to sew the bottom of the skirts center back and then move on to having the zip ready in place. So here I am putting in pins in place so that the invisible zip doesn't move and everything's even when it's sewn. Here's what the pins look like. And so we're going to go ahead and sew the invisible zip to the center back seam. After finishing the left side, we're going to do the right hand side now. And then here I've got a leather band strip which I randomly found in my studio. What I'm going to do is get the measurement of it around the neckline, and then I'm going to cut it so that it fits my neckline, and then I'm going to fit it to this front design feature, which is this kind of pleating effect which I've done. So what I've done here is attach the leather band strip to the center back panel of the pattern piece, and then using the bias binding I'm going to seal off and create a clean finish with the leather band tucked in the middle of the bias binding. Snip off any raw edges or seams, loose threads, and we're going to repeat this process onto the front. Now that that's finished, I am going to add a bias binding to the raw edges of the bottom skirt hem. And I like using bias binding on curved pattern pieces because it creates a smooth finishing and really clean, sophisticated finish where there's no puckering or there's no curling on the edges. Now that that's done, I'm going to do the pressing, so just ironing the best that I can on the invisible zip at the center back so that everything is even and professional. Apparently I did not do a good enough job with pressing the overall dress, so here I have my mum overtaking the ironing of the dress. I think she did a much better job than me, actually. Pressing is a very important part in completing an outfit because it ensures that there's a seamless finish. where everything looks professional. And so my mum's pressing on the pleating that I created on the front neckline. So this looked even better after pressing. So thank you to my mum for helping me. And so that is the end of my video DIY dress in which I made. It's quite a simple dress because there was no lining involved. So this is what the after dress looks like. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's certain techniques in which I did shortcuts or may have done differently to other dressmakers, but this is my version on how I did it. And I'm happy with the result, and I hope the same goes to those that give it a go. So I hope you enjoy, and stay tuned for my next DIY video. Thank you for watching.